Since the Battle of Waterloo will have its 200-year anniversary this month, a few trivia facts may come in handy. The battle took place June 18, 1815, while the coalition army under the command of Duke of Wellington took a defensive stand in the north of the battlefield. The French troops attacked from the south, while the Prussian army entered the battle from the east. It ended with a decisive defeat of Napoleon's army and ended his rule forever. Number 1. What is known as the Battle of Waterloo, it was not the actual location of a battle. Fighting took place about 4 kilometers south of the village. The reason for the name was the fact that Wellington slept there the night before the battle and afterwards decided to name of said village. It is also noteworthy that Blücher, the commander of the Prussian forces, preferred to name it after La Belle Alliance, the inn that served as Napoleon's HQ and was the place where he and Wellington met after the battle. As a result, Prussian and later German historians until the 1920s called it the Battle of Belle Alliance instead of the Battle of Waterloo. Number 2. The Prussian contribution to the French defeat is quite often underestimated. The main reason for this was the behavior of Wellington. He was very anxious to present himself as a hero and main victor against the French, to bolster his own prestige and facilitate his career. A career that at the end made him Prime Minister. Therefore he had to downplay the role of his allies during the campaign and went to great length to do so, including smear campaigns against scholars who disagreed with his claims. Just ask William Syborn about it. Number 3. Another thing about Wellington. Often his strategy of fighting the battle out of a defensive, and especially his trick of positioning his men on a hill slope so that they could fight the enemies coming over the hilltop, are praised as cunning and creative. And the brilliance of these tactical decisions is self-evident. However, they were not new. Wellington, back when he was still Arthur Wellesley, used such methods repeatedly during the Peninsular War. He always preferred to fight in the defensive. He heavily relied on the volley fire ability of his men, and he often used hills in the same manner as he did at Waterloo. Napoleon was surprised at this because he never fought against Wellington before. Number 4. The English army that was barely English. Another topic is the composition of the coalition troops. The Prussians aside, no pun intended, they included the forces of several small German princes, like Brunswick and Nassau, the Dutch army and the army of the Kingdom of Hanover, connected through personal union to England. The British troops included 6,000 members of the King's German Legion. Only about a quarter of the troops came from Great Britain, and most of these were in fact Irishmen, including Wellington himself. Napoleon's defeat is most likely the best researched military campaign in history. However, it was not the only place of action back in 1815. Besides the French L'Armée du Nord and their Anglo-Dutch and Prussian counterparts, there were also several other theaters of action. Austrian-Russian troops advanced across the Upper Rhine and moved towards Paris. Additional Austrian troops fought in Upper Italy and against the Kingdom of Naples under Joachim Murat. Austria was quite busy at the time. In addition, there was also the royalist uprising in the Vendée region of western France. Altogether, there were about 1 million troops of the 7th Coalition fighting against 250,000 French. An old saying goes, exceptional battles often follow exceptional rainfall. Waterloo was no different. In the night before, heavy rainfall had soaked the battlefield, hindering any movement. As a consequence, the French attack was delayed from 900 until 1113. Some formations didn't even make it to their starting position for the attack before 1300. At the time, the first Prussian troops had already reached the battlefield. Before and during the battle, Napoleon was suffering from several medical conditions, like stomach pain, diarrhea, and hemorrhoids. He was also exhausted from the advance to the battlefield. To make things worse, he received treatment with laudanum, a mixture of opium and alcohol, to alleviate his pain, but ended up with an overdose. Basically, he was not fit to command an army and had to rely on his commanders. The different nations used different requirements for military promotions. The Russians demanded high birth and status, while the British allowed the buying and selling of commissions. Revolutionary France used a new concept, promotion by merit. Soldiers who had proven themselves in the field could be promoted through the ranks. A popular saying was that every French soldier carried a marshal's baton in his backpack. However, merit does not equal intelligence. France ended up with a bunch of extremely brave but not necessarily smart commanders. Napoleon himself made matters worse because he relied 100% on his own genius. He preferred officers and generals who were not people to think for himself, but to carry out his orders without question. At Waterloo, two of such guys should be extremely damaging to old Barney. The first one was Michael Ney, who wasted the complete French cavalry in a brave but foolish, unsupported attack against the carriers of the coalition. The second was Emmanuel de Grouchy, who was ordered to pursue the Prussian troops his sword against their back, which he obeyed to the letter, even when it was necessary to break contact and move between them and the battlefield. He missed the whole battle as a result. As we have seen, most of the soldiers of Wellington's army were non-British. But what's more interesting is that many of them were in fact veterans who had fought before. Do not forget that a huge chunk of continental Europe was under French occupation, with some regions, like the Netherlands, being annexed by it. So the army these men served in was none other than Napoleon's Grande Armée. L'Empereur was fighting his own veterans at Waterloo. Number 10. One of the most glorious or humorous stories was about the resistance of the French Old Guard and the general Pierre-Étienne Cambronne. Being the last holdout on the battlefield and facing overwhelming numbers of enemy soldiers and guns, it is told that the general said, "La vieille garde meurt, mais elle ne se rend pas," meaning about the old guard dies, but she will not surrender. However, there is also the story that he simply said merde, meaning shit. Given that he refused for the rest of his life, he died in 1842, to comment on the exact quote, I'm more in favor of number 2.